Passion as an existential structure of human action. A philosophical analysis. Abstract. This paper examines passion as a philosophical concept beyond a purely moral evaluation. It proceeds from the thesis that passion is not a moral category, but an existential structure of the human relation to the world and to the self. Through a conceptual analysis and the inclusion of classical and modern philosophical positions, Aristotle, the Stoics, Spinoza, Kant, Kierkegaard, it is shown that passion is normatively neutral and acquires ethical relevance only through reflection, measure, and responsibility. Introduction. Passion belongs to the fundamental phenomena of human experience. It permeates everyday language, art, politics, and religion, as much as philosophical reflection. Yet its status remains ambivalent. On the one hand, passion is regarded as a source of meaning, motivation, and creativity. On the other hand, it is perceived as a threat to rational self-determination and moral judgment. Throughout the history of philosophy, assessments of passion have oscillated between rejection and affirmation. While ancient and Enlightenment positions often call for the control or overcoming of passion, existential philosophical approaches emphasize its constitutive significance for human existence. This paper advances the thesis that passion is neither good nor bad in itself. Rather, it is to be understood as an existential structure that places the human being in a non-neutral relation to the world. Its moral evaluation is secondary and dependent on its reflective integration. The aim is to clarify the concept of passion, to determine its relation to reason and effect, and to situate its normative relevance philosophically. Main part. First, conceptual determination of passion. Passion denotes an intense and enduring attachment of the subject to an object, a person, an idea, or a practice. This attachment exceeds momentary emotional states and structures the entire framework of orientation of human action. Passion is identity constitutive insofar as it determines what appears essential to the subject. In contrast to mere preferences or interests, passion possesses existential depth. It demands time, attention, and commitment. The passionate person does not stand at a distance from what binds them, but is involved in this relation. Second, etymology and passivity. The etymological origin of the term in the Latin passio, suffering, undergoing, points to a central philosophical aspect. Passion is not a purely active act of sovereign self-determination. It is an event of being affected. Already Aristotle describes pathe as states in which human beings are affected and are not fully masters of their reactions. Passion thus points to a fundamental dimension of human existence. The human being is not autonomous in a strong sense, but open, vulnerable, and responsive. This passivity is not a deficit, but a condition of meaning. Only a being capable of being affected can experience something as essential. Third, distinction from affect and emotion. Passion must be distinguished from affects and emotions. Affects are typically short-term, situational emotional reactions. Passion, by contrast, possesses temporal duration and structural stability. While affects come and go, passion shapes life decisions, priorities, and self-understanding. It is not episodic, but orienting. In this sense, passion is less a state than an existential stance. Fourth, passion and reason, a false opposition. The traditional opposition between passion and reason proves insufficient upon closer examination. Reason is a faculty of justification, order, and the selection of means. It can explain how something is to be done, but not why something appears meaningful at all. Passion establishes this relevance. Without passion, reason remains formal and empty. Without reason, passion becomes blind. The two stand in a complementary relationship. Fifth, the Stoic critique of passion. In Stoic philosophy, passion is regarded as an irrational state of the soul that clouds rational judgment. The aim of Stoic ethics is apatheia, freedom from passionate disturbance, Seneca. This position draws attention to real dangers, excess, affective blindness, and loss of self. However, it underestimates the positive function of passion as a source of motivation and meaning. Sixth, Spinoza's transformation of passion. Spinoza offers a more differentiated perspective. In his ethics, he understands effects as changes in the power of acting, potentia agendae. Passions are effects whose causes lie outside the subject. What is decisive, however, is not their suppression, but their understanding. Through adequate knowledge, Passive passions can be transformed into active effects. Reason here does not serve the elimination, but the transformation of passion. Seventh, Kant's critique and its limits. Kant judges passions critically, since as enduring inclinations, they can undermine practical reason. Passion binds the will and withdraws itself from rational control. At the same time, Kant implicitly acknowledges that reason alone does not provide sufficient motivation for moral action. Passion fulfills this motivational function, even though it must be normatively constrained. Eighth, existential truth in Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard radicalizes the significance of passion. For him, passion is a condition of existential truth. Truth is not merely knowledge, but a lived relation. Without passion, existence remains uncommitted. The human being then exists factually, but not in existential depth. Ninth, normative neutrality of passion. From a modern perspective, passion is normatively neutral. It is neither morally good nor bad in itself. Its moral quality emerges only from its consequences for action and its reflective integration. Passion is constructive when the subject carries it. It becomes destructive when the subject is carried or driven by it. 10th, loss of reflexivity. Passion becomes problematic where it withdraws from self-reflection. When it legitimizes itself and no longer allows internal contradiction, the subject loses critical distance. In such cases, normative authority shifts from the person to the passion itself. Fanaticism is an extreme form of this loss. 11th, form, measure, and responsibility. Passion requires form and measure. These are not to be understood as suppression, but as conditions of its humanization. Ethical principles, social responsibility, and institutional frameworks give passionate energy direction. 12th, passion as a touchstone of existence. Passion reveals what is truly essential to a person. It is a touchstone of lived values. What is not carried by passion remains abstract. Conclusion. Passion is not a moral category, but a fundamental existential structure of human existence. It shows that the human being does not stand neutrally toward the world, but is entangled in meanings and commitments. The philosophical task does not consist in eliminating passion, but in shaping it consciously. Passion is a force that makes meaning possible, while at the same time demanding responsibility.